I want you to write down and draw a couple of things. And these are going to pertain to what we're doing later. Where'd my scraper go? Okay. That is a right angle. Correct? Okay, so we're going to talk about tapering today. We've talked about it before. So tapering, if we have our slab, taper means we're going to cut like so. Okay, so we're going to taper our clay. So you should draw this out, write this down. Make sure you know this. On our mugs, you're going to have options of two kinds of, just totally went blank. Two kinds of, still not there, it's coming. Seams. Two types of seams. So the first is called a hidden seam. Okay, and we take a tapered slab and we run it around, and my tapers run like that and overlap each other. If I didn't taper it and it was like this, it would look like that. And that's called a butt joint. And we are not going to be doing butt joints, okay, where they're butted up against each other. If you do a butt joint, your mug will open up and crack. It's like, I'm going to give it a 95% chance of opening up and cracking, okay? A tapered allows for, as that clay comes over, it allows for there to be surface area so that when we put it together, it stays together instead of butted up against right there, okay? Okay, the next seam, so that's a hidden seam. So it's going to overlap like that. The next seam is a shown seam. And we have our square there, and we're not going to taper it. And it's going to wrap around like this. And it's going to cover up. So there will be an overlap. You see on this one, there's no thickness difference between my slab and my seam. And on this one, there is all the thickness. So there's two thicknesses of our slab overlapping. Okay? Right, so you have that. You'll use them depending on what you want to accomplish. I'm going to show you how to do both of them. What that looks like on a mug. So we have our mug here. My seam's going to be there, and you're hardly going to be able to see it. You have my mug here. This wraps around right there. This comes there, and there's going to be a little ledge right there you're going to be able to see. So an example of that is this one right here. Okay, do you see how you can see that seam, how it's sticking up? Okay. Something to be aware of on a shown seam is they need to be on purpose. Okay, and we'll get to that in just a second. But on purpose means a nice clean straight line, or it means a decorative line, something like that. Okay, what else do I need you to know? Handles. We're going to talk about handles today. And there are lots of types of handles, lots of ways to put them on. When we put a handle on, I'm going to show you a couple of ways. A lot of times we'll start with like a kind of a coil of clay. And we're going to put it on, and it can wrap like that. That's a good handle. Here, I'll start over with a bunch of these. So we have our mugs. So we wrap around. I call that an ear handle. Looks like an ear. We come here, and we put a little D or C handle on there. Okay. Sometimes we put 2 handles on there. What else do I need to cover? We have small handles and big handles. Depends on the size of your mug. So you could have a little ring handle like that if it's a smaller mug. You have decorative handles, and they are going to range depending on what you're trying to accomplish. But a decorative handle would be like a specific shape. What's a good shape we can talk about? A what? Say that loud.
Triangle.
Okay, so a triangle. So you could make a handle like that. Okay, so there's a lot of things we can do with handles. Let me show you what a handle is not. They call that a bacon handle, and it is not what we're going to do. A seashell, you could do a seashell. That would be more of a grip than a handle, but that'll be okay. All right. Anything else we need to cover here? Yeah.
So when we're doing the clay, like, do we just kind of roll it?
So I'm going to show you all of that right now. Okay. I just wanted you to have these so that when we get to them, you kind of understand what we're talking about. Okay, and then from here, there are 3 types of textures you're going to put on your piece, or have the option of putting on your piece. And you need to choose 2. 1, you have impress texture. Remember the other day when we got our stamps out and we were impressing our clay? We were pressing into it. Okay, so impressed. And that means to go in. 2, you have additive. Additive texture. This could be anything from just cutouts. Those little, these little silicone molds will be added on textures, to sculpting things. Okay. I'm going to tell you right now, your handle is not an additive texture. So you should write that down. So that when you ask me, like I said, it should be on your note sheet. Handle is not an additive texture. Unless it becomes like a dragon's tail.
It's not a what?
Additive texture.
Additive.
Additive. Added texture. You're adding it on. A dragon's tail, a robot's arm. I mean, there's a bunch of places this could go. If it is more on the sculpted side of things, it could be considered an additive texture. Okay, but just a handle is not. Okay, and then the last one is carved. C-A-R-V-E-D, carved. And that is to cut away, and you can do that. Okay. Yep, front side now.
I can't wait to watch the varsity football game.
Okay, you're going to use B-mix clay for your mug, not recycled clay. You're going to make 2 mugs. I had a scraper on this table. Does anyone see it? Nope, the bigger one.
Clear over there. Like under the bucket.
Purple. Oh, there's one over there. Okay. So those of you who are right in this range, if you will spread out just a little bit. And then take
Can I just scoot back?
That's fine.
Am I good or do I need it?
Yeah, scoot back just a little bit.
Oh wait, why do I have that?
Dude,
Okay.
stop throwing. You can't throw it.
Okay,
Put it in there.
Dude, that was pretty fun.
requirements.
Required.
3 days. We're gonna spend 3 days on this project. You're gonna start this on Tuesday. Go Tuesday, Monday. No, I missed a whole day.
Thursday.
Tuesday, Thursday, Monday. Okay. Next requirement, you're gonna make 2 mugs. You have to fire one, you do not have to fire both. Well, you can, but one of the reasons I say you have to fire one but not both is sometimes we make one and we don't like it as much, we make another and we like it more. Or sometimes we have one that goes and then it has some problems, but your second one, because you have a little bit of experience, works out better. You need to use 2 different types of textures. What kind of textures are there?
Additive, impressed, carved.
Additive, impressed, or carved. 2 different types of textures. Now, you might say to yourself, do I have to have both types of textures on both mugs? The answer is no. Okay, you can do impressed on one, additive on another. Impressed on one, carved on another. Okay. It needs to be on 30 to 50% of your mug textures. Okay, no less than in that range. And you can kind of decide what that looks like. What you don't get to do is come up here, find one of my little tiny stamps, poke that right into your mug, and go with that. Now, is that valid? Yeah, if you're a professional, that's valid. For this project, we're learning how textures work, and we're gonna learn how textures react with glaze. So you want more than just a little stamp. But you could do that stamp 25 times on your mug. You'll be all right. We'll use that one. Okay. I'm gonna show you 3 ways to make mugs. So we're going to do a cylinder mug. So it's gonna be built on a cylinder. We're going to be doing a cylinder mug not built on a cylinder, with a variation. And then we're going to be doing a tapered mug. So it tapers in a little bit. So, follow me on our little journey this way. So over here, get that pointed that way. Over here, we have cylinders in this little bucket. Different diameters, different heights, okay? And you get to choose which one you're going to do. Now, there are some really big ones, okay? I would recommend starting with the smaller one. And that is probably the smallest one. But I like to go with the gray ones. That makes a good mug. Now, height-wise, you choose the height you want. Okay, and I'm gonna actually pick this one right here. This is the one I like to work with. It makes a nice regular mug. Okay, next things you need. You need some tape. Okay, and there's always tape underneath the lotion area. You're gonna need a paper. There's a place over here that says newspaper on it. And you're gonna come, for most of you, you need one sheet of this newsprint. Okay, if you do one of the bigger ones, you might need more. So I got my tape, I got my cylinder, I got my newsprint, and I'm gonna use a piece of paper as my measuring device. Okay. I need to know how much clay goes around this cylinder. If I pick a bigger cylinder or a smaller cylinder, I need to know how much clay is going to go around them, right? And you could be like, oh, that much plus a little bit, right? You could do that, but I'm going to do this with a piece of paper, and it looks like this. You take your paper, you're going to wrap it on the bottom. And where it overlaps, right there, is the bare minimum clay. Now I'm going to give you this weird physics phenomenon. If I cut my clay exactly to that measurement and I wrap it around my cylinder, it's going to be short, right? Because the thickness does something to it. Do you know what it's called? No. You know what it is, though. Okay. So every time you measure, you're going to add at least 1.5 inches. So in this case, if I go 1.5 inches, I'm looking almost all the way to the end of this paper. So I know that from here to there wraps around that. Now, what happens if I go to a bigger one? See how that doesn't wrap around? So you could wrap this and go, oh, now I need to add 2 inches, 3 inches to it. You can figure that out. Or you could grab a bigger paper and do it. Okay. All right, so that. Now height. You choose the height. That's a decent height for a normal mug. Okay. And here's a great way of measuring things without a ruler. You can go get a ruler if you want. From this end to this end of this paper is 11 inches, which means that right there is 5.5 inches, which is a good height for a mug. That is 8.5 inches, which means when I fold it in half, that is 4.25 inches, right? So if you don't want to get very specific, I can be like, you don't want to guess about how tall I made this mug? Just over 4.25, okay, because it shrunk a little bit. So just kind of keep in mind, you have a measuring tool, okay, and a piece of paper. And in fact, in the real world, I use paper all the time to measure stuff. If I need like a guesstimate, I'm like, oh, that's 4 sheets of paper, 44 inches, right? Okay, next thing you need to know. No, now we're going to wrap our cylinder. So I'm going to use this paper. Oh, no, height. We need height. So when I make this, if you can see that there, I have the bottom and the top of the cylinder. You cannot wrap clay all the way to the top. So for the bottom, I have to leave a space of clay. Now this is where a lot of students get confused because you just go for it and then you go, I'll just cut it later. you're setting yourself up for some heartache because you're going to mess up your project, you're going to stretch it out. So we want to get the exact measurement now. Okay, so that is as tall as I can make on this cylinder. What if I want it taller? What's my option? We'll get a bigger one, right? A taller one. So I could come over here and go, no, I actually want a 10-inch cylinder. So I'm going to come in here and do one here because I have plenty of room on top. Okay, and I'm going to show you why we need that space in a minute. So I'm going to come here. I could go, oh, I only want it to there. Or I could go, I want it half, so 4 1/4. You can figure that out. And that's what I'm going to do, is a 4 1/4 mug. So I make a little crease. And everything in that blue area is as much clay as I need to wrap around this cylinder. Okay? Yes? Oh, you're just, yeah. Okay, next, we're going to wrap our paper on. And there's some very specific things you need to do. So as we wrap our paper on, it's going to start here and you're going to hold it. Never tape the paper to the cylinder. We're going to tape the paper to the paper. So we're going to wrap that fairly tight, and it's going to go around on this one 1.5-ish, 2-ish times. And then we're going to add just a little bit of tape on that seam. Now a little bit means you just a little piece, and you're going to come closer to the top, a little piece. Now, we have all this extra paper up here. It can stay there, but this is where a lot of beginners get confused because you go to cut out your clay, you're like, I have all this space. And you forget that you don't have all that space. You only have that much space. And you have to leave at least a little bit down, right? Okay, and we'll show you why in just a second. Okay, so that's taped on there, like that. If your cylinder is falling out, you did not wrap your paper tight enough and you need to start over. All right, now, I need to throw out a slab that is this big plus a little bit on my edges. Okay, does that make sense? Sweet. So I'm going to come over here and cut this. Now, I also need a slab for a bottom, and I'm going to wedge some up for a handle. Move these out of the way. So mathematically, what does that mean? I don't know, really. You could be like, and just kind of mess with that, but I'm going to cut a chunk off. You could cut this way, and that would be fine. You can cut this way, and that will be fine as well. Either way, you don't need to wedge this clay. So I'll show you the first one. So if you cut here, remember you put your thumb on the back and pull right to your thumb. Okay. Or you could come here and cut a little rectangle out like that. Either one of those is fine. What we don't want to do is cut really thin slices of clay. All right. When I throw out my slabs, so I'm going to just put a little mark on my table here so I can kind of see what I need to do, just because the paper is going to fly. So when I throw out my slabs, I always throw out how long I need it, and then I worry about the width. So I'm going to come in here and toss this out. Go a little bit further, so you got plenty of length, and now we're going to go with width. The thickness of your clay should be no thicker than one of these measuring sticks. Okay, we're going to use these. All right, I have my slab there, and I'm gonna bring my measurements. I don't wanna use my edges. I'm gonna bring my measurements out, and I'm just going to barely trace just the top and bottom, and then I'm gonna add a little extra clay. Now, your patterns, your designs are completely up to you and how you do this. If you want, you can come in here and be like, there's my center mark. I'm gonna start my design there and move out and be exact or close to exact. It just depends on what you wanna do. So I'm gonna go a little taller. The reason why I go wider and taller is when I bring this over and around, I don't wanna have these little marks on my piece. I'll show you what that means. So, we're gonna do an impressed texture, and there's all kinds of things we can do with textures, since you were playing with the balloon, or the submarine. So you can come in here. So, when you add textures, if you're going to impress your texture, do it before you make your cylinder. And this is why. We're gonna grab a roller. And those of you who are up front, I want you to watch. As I push with my roller, I want you to watch the edge. Did the edge move? Okay, so if I cut this nice straight line and then I push my textures onto it, the edge is going to move, which means my rim, my straight top, is now going to have a wave in it. Okay, is that big of a deal? I don't know. It just depends on you. Thought I had a mug with this texture on it. Someone must have stolen it. I do have this one. It says laugh. So you come in here and there's these wood textures. Love, I think.
They love laugh.
Yep. It's my philosophy of life. It's like live, love, leave me alone, honestly. It's more like
It doesn't work.
okay, is my textures, do I have about 30 to 50% with texture on it? It is not that hard to get texture on these. Okay, now I'm going to start to cut this out. I'm going to actually put this clay away. Because I'm a good clay citizen, I don't want this to dry out. And I'm going to cut a flat bottom, a flat or square side, and a flat top. Okay, and then I'm going to let one edge hang out long. And I'm just going to let this edge hang out long. So flat bottom goes like this. I'm going to put my paper down, line it up where I think my textures are. I'm going to put my measuring stick on that bottom. I'm just going to give it a nice cut like that. Okay. This piece needs to be wedged up and thrown in the bag pretty quickly, so we'll do that in a second. I'm going to scoot this over just a little bit, and I'm going to keep that same flat bottom. I could have kept it in the same spot and just cut it there. And now I'm going to run my flat side. This gives me a right angle. It's a square. So flat bottom, flat side. Now this is where I get my height. So pay attention to what you're doing and don't just go, I'm just going to cut it wherever, because it can't go any taller than my cylinder. And in this case, I am a little taller, but not than my cylinder, than what I planned. But I'm going to come in here, so I have my height mark. I'm just going to flip this paper over and line it up kind of on the bottom. But it's really important that this line, or these lines here match. That it's not like tweaked like that. Because if it's tweaked, then your top or your bottom is gonna be askew or off. So I'm gonna come here. Another way to do this, you could measure from the bottom to the top, put a little mark, bottom to the top, put a little mark, okay? And then you could run a line across it. This is a great way of doing this. Who are we texting over there?
Mom,
Oh, hi, Mom. What's she making for lunch?
probably.
Probably.
Jordan
What?
shoes.
And we're gonna cut that square. Now, if we look at this and measured it from here to here and here to here, it should be pretty close to the same. Okay? And I have a long end, and it's really important that we keep a long end. Right? Okay. Now, this clay is gonna go over there, and we're gonna flip this over. Why do we flip it over? We want our pattern, our texture, on the outside. So if I start to roll this up and it's on the inside, that's not gonna show anything. So this is my nice straight edge, this is my long edge, this is my bottom, that's my top. It's important that you pay attention to that. And then I'm gonna start to roll it. Now, I have lots of extra clay here, which is perfectly fine. And this is where we go to our hidden or shown seam. And we decide what we're going to do. And I'm gonna show you both. I'm gonna cut this a little bit. So if I make this a shown seam, see how you can see that overlap? Okay, it's gotta be on purpose. If I'm gonna make this a hidden seam, it's gotta be on purpose. So we're gonna turn this into a hidden seam, and it looks like this. So on your clay, so as we're coming in here, this is straight up and down, and we're going to taper our needle tool. Now, if you look, we have a bottom and a top. I am always cutting into the bottom, not away from the bottom. Because if I go away from the bottom, I might miss some of my clay. So always into the bottom. So this is straight up and down, and then I tilt it or taper it. Okay, and I start at the top, and I'm gonna pull towards the bottom. And the reason I do that is when I pull out, it's going to kind of push some of the clay out. If I go to the top, it's gonna be like a little weird bump. Okay, so you ready for this? I'll set that here. Now, mine's holding itself. If you're ever working with something and it's not, it wants to like roll, just take a little small piece of clay, put it on each side, and that'll kind of chalk that into place. I'm gonna come here, put my thumb at the bottom, not straight up and down, wherever it is you want, and I'm going to try to taper in. I'm gonna peel off the one side, I'm gonna open this up, peel off the inside, and then I put it back together. And you see how those are gonna line up, right? Sometimes you'll cut it, it'll be a little short, sometimes it'll be a little long. If it's long, you're gonna recut it. If it's short, you can press it out just a little bit so it moves. Okay, now for you as beginners, as you sit this like this, sometimes it flops open. Be extra careful that you're holding this. I'm going to open it up gently, and where's my, we'll just use a needle tool today. I'm gonna come in here and score this. Score this. And add a little bit of slip. Put it back on there, roll this up. Now, look at where I'm at. Got some people not paying attention here. If I roll this up, I don't want my seam to be where my tape is. it just will cause you some problems down the road. So I'm gonna flip my tape so it's straight down. My bottom's lined up. I'm gonna line my clay up there. Bring this, and I'm just going to compress that together. And now the thickness of my clay is the same, so we call that a hidden seam. That is also almost always where I put my handle. Okay, it helps that hide it a little bit more. So we come in there, compress that. You could, if you want, come in and add a texture to that. Like you could come in and add some of this texture down there. That helps to make that hide it just a little bit more. Okay. What's the next step? So, some of you aren't writing steps down. You should be, because when you come and ask me, I'm going to say, have you checked your notes? Okay, I know how to make this. You're learning how. So the next step, what did someone say? Put the bottom on. So the cylinder's in there, and I'm gonna put a bottom on. I'm gonna wedge up this clay, throw it in the bag real quick. Okay. So I take my clay here. The clay can have a texture on it, but that texture should be pointed down. If you make hot chocolate in a mug and there's texture on the inside, it's a lot harder to get that clean than if it's smooth. So just kind of keep that in mind. Is it the worst thing in the world? No, it's not. But keep that in mind. I do want my serrated ribs. Grab one. Did you see one? Right in front of my face. Okay, this is my favorite way of scoring a bottom on. I'm going to score the bottom of my mug. It's in my cylinder. I'm being careful. I'm going to add some slip to that bottom. Okay, clean it up just a little bit. I'm going to set this on my slab, and I'm going to pull it off. This is where some people get confused and they just start to go from here. So we're going to pull it off. That gives me my circle where I need to score, and I come in here and score that, and then I set it back down. Now, I do not cut my bottom out and then put it together. You might see a demo on the web somewhere that does that. That's fine. I don't. I do it this way. I scored it, I slipped it, I put it down, I lifted up, I scored the slab, I set it back down. Now, before I move on, I want you to look at this. As I'm working with my cylinder, if I'm pushing on my cylinder, I'm going to create a cookie cutter and cut through my clay, or make a big divot in the bottom, and it makes it thin and it tends to crack. So as you're doing it, you're going to work with the clay, not the cylinder. Okay, so be careful how you push your pressure down. Okay, now I'm going to cut this. We've talked about tapers a lot today. So if I cut this straight up and down, I don't want to. I want to cut it at a slight taper. This does 3 things for you. Okay, these 3 things. I wish I had a clicker to shut my door. No, it's fine. They'll be gone in 30 seconds. 3 things. Tapering the mug. It seals up the seam. It lifts the clay or adds a shadow underneath it. And it adds a glaze stop. A glaze stop is any angle that when the glaze is moving, it has to sit there for just a second. So if you look at all these, there's just a slight little taper at the bottom. We can start passing some of these around. Doesn't have to be a big taper. So I'm gonna come in here and cut this taper. It's gonna seal up my seam, add lift or a shadow to the bottom, and it creates a glaze stop. Okay, that lift is a visual thing. I just think it looks nicer. But mostly I'm worried that it's sealing up the seam and that it is creating a glaze stop.
Wait, so do you put it in or is it with it?
So in just a little bit. So not straight up and down, we tilt it towards the center just a little bit. Okay, now we're gonna make a handle real quick. If you don't get to this point on your first day, you have to take the cylinder out before you go from class. If you leave that cylinder in there, let's say it's today, we're not back till Tuesday, that is going to dry, it's going to stick to it, it might even crack because it'll shrink that much. So you have to take that cylinder out.
How do you remove the cylinder?
I'm going to show you in just a minute. But I like to put my mugs on, or my handles on, before then. So I'm going to take a piece of clay, wedge it up. I'm going to make a coil. There are a bunch of ways of making handles. I'm going to cover a few ways. I'm going to roll out a coil. Now, the coil should be, I got new Expo markers. So, not this thick, but this thick. That's about how thick your coil should be. Okay. If you make a larger mug, your handle should be a little bit bigger. If you make a smaller mug, a little bit smaller, but not much. So I'm just gonna roll this out.
What's the biggest mug you've made?
I have done this process and I made umbrella stands, so they're this big.
Like that.
About there, a little shorter than that. Okay, so I'm gonna roll this out. I'm looking at my thickness. If it starts to get flat, you can twist it. It is not that big of a deal if it gets flat. We're actually gonna be manipulating these. And there. Okay, now height-wise, it depends on what kind of handle you want. But if I were to put a handle on here, I wanted to start in this sort of a range and then come down and end. So I want a little bit of space, a little bit of space. I don't have to have that. That space, it can be smaller, it can be right on the ends. It just depends on you, but I like it so it's just up or down a little bit, up a little bit. So what I do is I take my needle tool and I measure. And I go, okay, the height of this from the bottom to the very top is about there. That's 5 inches. Okay? I know that's 5 inches because that's what the needle tool is up until where the needle starts. And then I add a little bit more for the curve. Okay? So I come in here, I'm gonna go, I need about that much. About that much. All right, so many ways we can make handles. I would recommend making 2 or 3 because remember the bacon handle? If you put a bacon handle on, you're going to get dock points. Okay. I like to taper mine, so I'm going to roll this out so it's a little thinner on the bottom than the top. I call that a carrot or a tapered. I'm going to taper some of these. I don't have to. The top is usually thicker. And then the next thing is we always start out with a round coil. If you have a slab and you start out with your slab and go to bend it, that slab is not gonna hold itself, it's gonna flop. But a circle, even if we flatten this out, will hold itself. So I have this right here, right? It's a coil. If I take this right now and just flatten it out just a little bit, like that, and then I'm going to massage a handle like that, it'll hold itself. Okay, so that's nothing special. That's just a coil, slightly flattened, and it's gonna hold itself. And then we can put that on my mug. Okay, so let's cover a couple of other things you can do. And I'll do some others as we move along. We could add texture. So lightly press that on both sides if you want. So there's a textured handle. Okay. And always massage your clay. If you don't massage it and you just come in and bend it,
It'll work.
it's gonna flop, right? And now when you try to fix that, it's always going to flop. So when you work on your clay, always massage it. Be gentle with it. Gently massage it. If you're getting cracking, okay, set that aside. If you're getting cracking, where's my button? Right there. You can do this. You can get a sponge, tiny bit of water, and you can just gently press and rotate this. That will compress the clay. It's not dripping, but it is adding a little bit of water to it. Compress that clay, and that will help to get rid of the cracking. Now, while we're doing that, we can also shape it. So we could come in here, I'm gonna push with my thumb and my index finger. As I'm pulling down, I'm gonna create a spine. So like a triangle. Okay, that also lengthened it, but do you see that triangle? Okay, so that could go on as a handle. Let's form that into a handle. That's a big old handle. That might look good, it might not, we'll see. Let's do another one there. And, oh, I wanted one more. But I'm just making that little spine. No one wants a spineless handle. Actually, a spine will actually add strength to your handle. So we have that spine, right? We can twist it like so. You could turn that into a handle so it has a full twist, or you could throw it down on a piece of paper and it now has a flat bottom, and you gently massage that into place. We have a nice little twisted handle. This clay wants to work for us. I like texture a lot, and so a lot of times when I'm doing stuff, I don't mind the little creases and bumps and stuff. Some people really don't like those. That's fine. You're not wrong. It's just, I like texture. Okay, I'm gonna come here to my texture buckets, and hopefully they put these back. Yeah, they did. So I have a couple of these lag screws, and I'm just going to run this around. Best I can. I'm gonna cut that. My needle tool down. And we can create a nice little, like, spring looking handle. Okay, and that's on this one here. So you can pass these around. This is a spined handle, not twisted.
Is that what you did right here?
This is just a regular. As we pass them around, this one has carving on it. Those little lines create patterns. Also has stamps, so pass all those around. Anyways, let's put this on, because I want to put this on now. I like this nice little spined handle. And this is how I'm gonna do it. One, I go to my seam, almost always. And you can do this looking down on it. I'm gonna show you this way. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go, what does it visually look like? That's too big of a handle. It's sticking out too far. So I'm gonna run that in a little bit and go, that's probably not too big. Okay, now, I'm gonna cut these. And we have straight up and down mugs, so straight up and down cut. That comes straight down, and then I'm gonna double check again. We think that looks pretty good. Okay. Top side should be the thicker side. I'm gonna tell you something, it'll come back. Okay, on this one, I'm gonna come in and score it. And then we're gonna make 2 more types of mugs. Add a little bit of slip, and we're gonna do the same thing we did with the bottom. We're going to put it on there. Make sure it's pretty much lined straight up and down. And that gives us our little slip marks. Set that aside gently. We're gonna come in and score this. You can use a needle tool or your serrated rib. Oh, this is what I'm gonna tell you. When we're making, if you're making a mug for someone else, 2 fingers is usually a minimum of how you want to hold a mug. If you have small hands, you should make sure four fingers go in there, because it's going to shrink to a 3-finger, or for a large hand person, a 2-finger mug. So kind of keep that in mind. Whenever I do mine, as I'm holding this, I want to make sure that I can put 3 fingers in there. When this shrinks, it's going to be a 3-finger mug for a smaller person and a 2-finger mug for a slightly larger hand person. And 2 fingers is what you want. I mean, in theory, you could make it 1. Just do all your tools. I'm gonna grab a wood knife and a wood rib. So as we're putting this together, a couple things you're looking for. You want to make sure that it's not slumping up here. So I'm going to come in and compress this with my wood knife. And there are so many little tricks that we can do to this. This is one of those times, anyone who has fingernails, you can run your fingernails around there. There are potters who make a lot of mugs who keep their pinky nail long just for this, so they can come in and you don't have to pick up a tool. Okay, we get that compressed in. See how that's like so? And then, again, there's so many things we could do. If we wanted to, we could come in and run like a coil around that, add strength and add some decoration to it. There's a bunch of stuff we can do to these mugs, but we're not going to do that. This is one of those things as you're doing them and you think, could I do that? Think it through, try it out, come find me, we'll work through it. Okay, so my mug is done. Okay, I've got to take my cylinder out. If I leave it in there, it's going to crack. So this is how I do it, and pay attention to how this works. So I have my extra paper. I'm going to lift it down gently and reveal my cylinder. Remember I said you had to have some cylinder above your clay, and it's for this reason, so you can pull this out. What? It's not coming out.
So what do you do when it's not coming out? You just pray?
You can pray, I can meditate. Okay, it's not coming out because of surface tension. So there's water touching the paper, which is slightly touching our cylinder, okay? The longer you let it sit in here, the more the surface tension. So as beginners, you might want 2 people to do this. I trust you.
No.
Gently hold my clay. Don't squeeze it, just gently hold. And watch, it just goes like this. We twist and we pull that right out. But if you just pull straight out, it's not going to come out. It might, but it probably won't. So you've got to break the surface tension, twist it, and then lift it out.
What about the paper?
We could leave it in there for now, if you want, or I just like to bundle it up, twist and pull that out. Okay, the only thing I'm worried about right this second is making sure that my seams are all sealed up. Okay, and you can come in with a wood knife and compress that, but that looks good. I am gonna look at my roundness. If my roundness is off, we're gonna talk about this in a second, but, oh, that's dirty. Ceramics too, these kids. We'll get these washed, but you can put this in there and true out your rim just a little bit with this little flower pot. I learned that about 3 years ago. My mind was blown. Yeah, changed my life. It's easy to change my life. Okay, do not leave this out. It's got to be in a bag because it's going to dry. And that handle is going to be the thing that dries the first, which means it will want to crack off. So be careful with it. And when you're holding it, again, be careful. Okay, let's do another one. So we're going to throw out a slab. I have an option of doing 2 more here. You guys get the long version of these Monday for B-days. I have to fly because that's a small day or a short day. So I'm going to do a cylinder mug, no cylinder. Crazy.
We did it on the wheel.
No, this is a hand-built project. On the wheel, you're going to learn to make cylinders and do your best to make a good cylinder. When you come to class, you're going to, okay, that's about the right thickness. You're going to be breaking up into your groups again. Half of you are going to start on your hand-built project, half of you on the wheel. And you're going to go 3 days and then 3 days. Now, I'm going to use the same measurements. I could use different measurements, but I'm going to do this slightly differently. So my bottom, I'm going to cut that nice and straight, because we need a nice and straight bottom, right? The side, oh, guess what I didn't do? My texture. So I'm going to come in here, we're going to make this a Halloween mug.
Oh, I can't wait. That's what I'm gonna do. It's just happening.
And then we're going to put an R on there. Maybe I'll give it to my daughter. Her name's Raquel. Yeah. That's a 9. So we're going to have that as well. Oh, I said I was going to use this one. So we'll use this. Those are little leaves, like they're floating in fall. That's good stuff right there. Okay. And double check my bottom. Looks okay. So I'm going to come here, and this is the difference. Before, I cut a flat bottom and a straight flat side, right? So this one, I'm going to put my measuring tool there, and I'm going to cut a tapered in. Okay, so it's going to taper in like that. Going to pull my paper down. I'm going to create my height. And I do that by lining this line up with my paper so that this is a square. So tapered in, but the top is going to be flat. And then I'm going to pick wherever I want the other one to be. So if I want it to be the exact same size as that other one, I'm going to come in here, line that up, a little short, and I'm going to taper it out. The tapers have to go the same way. We did it on our hidden seam. They went the same way, we just did them at the same time. So we're going to taper them out like this. So I'm going to come in here, line that up straight, and taper that out. So if you can see that, one side goes to the in, one goes to the out. Okay? And that would look like this there, right? Okay, so let's hurry and do that. I'm going to show you two more because you're all in tune with this. The next one, we're going to do additive texture. As I'm going, please ask questions. Also, please sketch out ideas. What kind of textures do you want? What kind of mug looks good to you? I'm just going to press this and zipper it down. So just pushing it down. It's okay that it gets a little bit out. Okay, so I make that. It is a little bit harder than it seems because you have to be extra careful with your hands. Gonna true that. I'm gonna gently flip this over. Going to clean up my inside seam, making sure it's compressed. I can come in and smooth it out later. Glaze will also smooth some of it out. And then I'm going to make a bottom. Got a lot of stuff going on over here. So on mug types, we have a cylinder mug that you learned about with a cylinder. Now we have a cylinder mug, sans cylinder, no cylinder. We're going to do a slab mug that goes into a point. And I'm going to do that one pretty quickly. So I'm going to come here. Now, on this, I am not going to put a handle on it until it's leather hard. Because if I start to push on it with the handle, it's going to cause me some problems. So I'm not going to put a handle on it. I hope that's the bottom. Yeah. Gently set it there.
Is this way easier?
It's not easier or harder. It's a little less complex, but because there's nothing supporting your piece, if you're not careful, it's going to crush a lot easier. Where you can be a little bit more rough when it has a cylinder on the inside, because there's something holding it. And this is why you're going to make two. And some of you might make three, because maybe you'll get 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes into one and go, no. Right? And you want to start over. And that's why we have 3 days to do it. Okay, I'm going to cut this at an angle. And just clean that up. Okay, and that's the first part of that, right? Okay, let's throw out another slab real quick. I'm gonna throw out enough clay for 2 pieces. Because I'm gonna do a tapered mug. Okay? We use this form for a tapered mug, and it has to be in these dimensions. When it bends over, it creates a flat bottom and a flat top. That's what our like hot chocolate coffee mugs at the store are made out of that taper in. They look like that. Okay. Yeah, we got time.
Yeah, we do.
So this one tells you exactly how much clay you have to throw out. I'm just wedging that because I cut that weird shape out of it. Lots of pressure. Okay, turn those coils away from you. Now, if you make your mug too thick, one of the requirements, well, let's talk about those. It's your bottom, handle, and rim have to be smooth. Otherwise, you didn't make a mug, you made something else. The bottom, I'm going to cut this straight, has to be smooth, and we don't want it to be the rim to be thick. If it is thick, we can come in and taper that down. I'll talk about that later, or if you make that mistake. So again, back to the requirements. You need to have a smooth bottom, because if it scratches up your table, you're never going to use this. If your handle is uncomfortable because it's sharp and bumpy, you're never going to use it. And if your rim is sharp or too thick, you're never going to use it. Okay. Cut my bottom. I'm going to taper this in. I'm going to cut my top. So I line that up. I didn't put any textures on this. And if and when you make that mistake, I'm going to show you how to fix that. One, you could carve into it. That's a texture. Okay, now, not to blow your minds, but are you ready for this? Did I cut in on that last one? I'm going to cut in on this one as well.
Mind blown.
Woo. I mean, it is Friday. Okay, I'm going to hold that for just a second. I'm going to pull this over here. I'm going to grab myself a texture. And a circle. Perfect. So this is just a little fondant stamp. It could be anything. So it could be letters. It could be one of our impressed pieces with those silicone molds. We got that. I'm going to cut this out. That was my piece, wasn't it? This was the one I was supposed to be working on. Thanks for telling me. Let's hurry back to this. Yeah, I was like, that's not the, it was way too big. Good. It's a conceptual mug. So cut this in. Let me cut this in while I'm here. And then I'm gonna cut the top. Paper's getting a little sticky. Cut the top. Is it the worst thing if your top isn't 100% level? It's really not. That'll make a great bottom. Oh, that's not gonna fit. Oh, it is gonna fit. So lucky. So I'm gonna come here, I'm gonna score this. Add a little bit of slip to it. Put that on there, I'm gonna score this. Anytime you put an additive texture on and it's large, make sure when you put it on, you start in the middle and push out. Otherwise, you're gonna trap air bubbles. Okay, that's a pretty thick additive texture, but it's all right. I'm gonna score these. Yeah, I got time. A little bit of slip. And then I'm gonna push these together. And it's gonna create a point or a teardrop. So do you see that? So that's a perfectly acceptable mug. Get that on there. Get that there. And then you know how to put a bottom on, compress all that, whatever. The handle could go there, it could go here. While I'm doing this next one, and let's do a whole so if you want the texture to be almost flat, you've got to roll it on in a curve. So I'm going to come in here, and this is tar paper. You can use a stick, but I'm just going to cut this in, put this around, cut this out. And then cut the top. And because it's tar paper, it has enough form to hold itself. Set that over there. Okay, you see my piece here? When I wrap this around, it's going to create that mug. So let's score and slip that. And again, I'm rushing just a little bit. What else do you need to know? You've got lots of options. Oh, on these, you can choose which side's your top, which side's your bottom. So you can have a narrow top or a wide top. You choose. Stitch that in. Flip that over. Get that compressed real well. You see how that texture is pretty flat now? One of the best parts about this is could you make a kidney bean mug? Sure, you can, but we're gonna tree that out. When you start with this project, what was I gonna say? Oh, when you start, the first day, you may get a mug, you may not. But the great part is, so I'm gonna put this, don't push down so hard, because if you do, you're gonna split your seam. But as you're working, you may, again, be halfway through it and go, I really don't like the way this is going. But you've learned some things, so start over. If your first mug you really hate, start over. You'll be able to make it faster. And a lot of times, if it takes us a day and a half to make one, it'll take us a day to make another. And then if you're like, I really hate my first one, but I want to fire two, it's going to take you a half a day to make your third one. And you can just kind of do that on your own time to finish it up. Not really a big deal. Okay, I'm going to put a bottom on that. All kinds of fun stuff you can do. When we do our starting, you're starting on Tuesday. So you have the option of making 4 kind of variations on mugs. I will do another, so we go Tuesday, Thursday. I will do another handle demo, one individually if you get there on Tuesday, but as a group on Thursday. Okay? On Tuesday, those of you who are going on the wheel, we're gonna do about a 10-minute, 15-minute wheel throwing demo. So I can show you exactly what you need to do over 3 days. Thank you. Andrew Carr. It's an eaglegram. I didn't know we did eaglograms. Okay. While we're doing this, I'm gonna finish this off. So last thing to talk about. Do you have any questions about mugs? I know that was a quick demo. It's a lot of information.